I'm probably going to make a lot of people mad, but I am not talking about civilization today. I'm talking about the Western civilization of Numenor. Not anything in our Earth. But of course, there are going to be some parallels to our civilization today, so feel free to hang out and see what JRR Tolkien, through the character of Faramir, says about the decline of the kingdom of Numenor. Now, why exactly it fell and what hope for it remains are the lines in this book that I really want to talk about, but there's a line that Faramir says here that I just have not been able to get out of my head for like a week. And I think it's poignant for us today in how some of us talk about the past. Now, everything that comes out of the mouth of Faramir, I am hanging on to and clinging on to. I think he is perhaps the wisest character that I've met in the books so far. Weirdly, even more than Elrond or Gandalf. It's wild how wise this man seems. And I am currently writing a very long essay on Faramir and why I think everything in this chapter shows both his brilliance and wisdom, but also the brilliant writing of J.R.R. Tolkien, so that will probably come out early this weekend or maybe early next week. I was planning to write like 5 essays on Faramir because everything in this chapter, which is on the window of the West, just shows how incredible this character is, but I think I'm going to combine it into one mega essay. And I know too that I am reading this for the first time, so I will get things wrong because I haven't read things in the Silmarillion and I don't really know the details about all this thing that Faramir is talking about with the Kingdom of Numenor. I only know what Faramir sees and believes at this moment in the story. And shameless plug, just to subscribe to my channel for more thoughts on my read-through of Lord of the Rings. But first, let's talk about his opinions on Numenor and Gondor. He's having this conversation with Frodo after dinner, and this is what Frodo asks him. "But tell me now of your own fortunes," said Frodo, turning the matter aside once again. "For I would learn more of Minas Ithil and Osgiliath and Minas Tirith the long-enduring. What hope have you for the city in your long war?" Now, his response is incredible here. "What hope have we?" said Faramir. "It is long since we had any hope. The sword of Elendil." Now, again, I just want to reiterate that the sword is already reforged and Aragorn is in possession of this, heading to Minas Tirith to kind of reclaim his throne. He says, "The sword of Elendil, if it returns indeed, may rekindle it. But I do not think that it will do more than put off the evil day. Unless other help unlooked for also comes from elves or men. For the enemy increases, and we decrease. We are a failing people, a springless autumn." And to be honest, I think a lot of novelists would just stop with Faramir's dialogue right here because people love writing a pessimistic, cynic character. But not so with Tolkien and not so with Faramir. I think Faramir possesses just far too much wisdom to leave it with this hopeless answer. Again, more people, I think, in some of these stories that we have today are just more cynics and more pessimists. And they just want to talk about the fall of a kingdom and not the hope that is rekindled because of it. And Faramir then gives a whole diagnosis for why his people are failing in the next few paragraphs. Why they are a springless autumn, which is such a good metaphor for this kingdom. He says, "The men of Numenor were settled far and wide on the shores and seaward regions of the great lands. But for the most part, they fell into evil and follies. Many became enamored of the darkness and the black arts. Some were given over wholly to idleness and ease, and some fought among themselves until they were conquered in their weakness by the wild men." So from the outset, this paragraph kind of shows just a whole cycle of human civilization. Now, one of my favorite series of paintings ever is Thomas Cole's work when he did the Course of the Empire. I think it was just called Course of Empire. And in this work, he painted 5 paintings. One where it was like the beginning of this society, one the growth of this society, one the peak of this civilization, and then the 4th one was the slow fall of this civilization, or maybe the quick fall of the civilization, and the last was the ruin of this civilization. And it's just a really, really interesting portrayal in this light too with Numenor and how civilizations rise and fall and what really these civilizations are trying to do or accomplish. Because strong civilizations tend to get comfortable and focus on strange things, or perhaps get too idle and maybe too comfortable with the ease of living. Some fight among themselves, just like Faramir says, and they were conquered by weaker people. It's, I think, something that all of us can kind of recognize in civilization today. This is how civilizations and kingdoms crumble. But what he says next is actually, I think, even more interesting to me. And this whole idea, this whole paragraph is just so good. He says, "Death was ever present, because the Numenorians still, as they had in their old kingdom, and so lost it, hungered after endless life unchanging. Kings made tombs more splendid than houses of the living, and counted old names in the rolls of their descent dearer than names of the sons. Childless lords sat in aged halls, musing on heraldry. In secret chambers, withered men compounded strong elixirs, or in high cold towers asked questions of the stars. And the last king of the line of Venarian had no heir. Now, yet again, I haven't read the Silmarillion, so I know there's a ton of info about why Numenor fell and what they were seeking after, and it just seems really strange. I'm really excited to get more information on that, and people in my Discord tell me that it's very spoilery because I was asking this question. But don't give me any real spoilers here because I am going to read the Silmarillion soon. But I think this message is really still an interesting one, whether you know fully the story or not. And its interpretation, I think, has some significant application to today. Now, immortality seems like it's something given by the gods. Again, I don't know the ins and outs of this world in detail yet, but I do know that some have said, when they're talking about the story with me, that the gods, or the god of Middle Earth, actually gave the gift of mortality to men. To think this idea as a gift is pretty wild. That the elves don't have the same gift is actually fascinating. And it makes sense that while here on Earth, I think the men of Numenor started to look at it as if it was something more of a curse rather than a gift. And they started to long after things that they shouldn't long after. This is the story from the beginning of humanity as well, looking to things that you don't really have or that don't belong to you, and that's the thing that ends up killing you. I think the line about tombs being more splendid than homes is particularly interesting because I think it shows like this inversion in this culture and the civilization. The living build monuments to death rather than investing in the living and in life. It reflects a civilization that has turned inward, obsessed with their legacy and their memory rather than on how to actually live their life in the present and living for the future generations. I think that seems key for the entire Lord of the Rings novel, as literally it's a story about Frodo marching to Mount Doom, and he's sure that he's going to die, and he's doing it because he essentially wants to ensure the beauty of the Shire remains, and that everyone in the Shire can remain as they are. That, at the very least, is why I think Frodo's motivation is so powerful in this story. But Tolkien talks about this everywhere on the page too. How evil seems like it's a destruction of things, and good is fighting against those evil things. And even more, it's a preservation and beautification of things for future generations. And the Numenorians focusing on death it feels like a kind of idolatry. Not really of like gods, but of themselves. I can only imagine what the men of Numenor even did because of this fear of death that they had. This obsession that they didn't want to die and wanted to continue living, because I feel like a focus on that and an obsession can only lead you to waste your entire life thinking about it. And so I'm really curious how the city, or how the kingdom of Numenor really descended into what they became today, or what they became in Faramir's time. I'm really curious. And when I get there, I can't wait to talk about that more. But in Gondor, the legacy of this fear seems to remain. And it's not really like a blasphemy, but it's in the subtle choices that they do, where the elixir is brewed in secret chambers, and there's cold towers where men ask questions of the stars, really instead of nurturing the things on Earth, which is Tolkien's greatest lesson he's trying to teach humanity about the fall of civilizations. I think contrast this Numenorian kingdom with the kingdom like, not really a kingdom, but the place of the Shire. One has opulence and grandeur as their aim, to leave a legacy, and the other knows that you will return to dust and die. So the Shire folk just kind of are like people living in Eden, focusing not on their own mortality, but the enjoyment of life in the face of mortality. Hobbits have these modest homes and large families and love of simple pleasures. And this represents, I think, Tolkien's ideal of a life well lived, not through conquest or lineage, but through love and courage and kindness. Frodo, a hobbit, asks about hope. Faramir, a man of Gondor, speaks of their absence of it. Their conversation, I think, is more than just a historical reflection. I think it's a meeting of worldviews. And in this, Tolkien is offering a critique not only about his fictional world, but I think of the modern world. The image of tombs surpassing homes really, really hits me, because I think it's where real world empires are building these huge mausoleums and things that honor the dead while neglecting the needs of the present generation, or really building for the future generation. It's a cautionary vision of what happens when a society clings so tightly to the past that it forgets how to grow and change or love. And so Faramir sits here, a man with very little hope, but still fighting nonetheless, which is a beautiful thing. And he still speaks of a rekindled hope, dependent not really on the bloodlines, but on the possibility of help from unexpected places. And I'm not sure if he knew those unexpected places were going to come from two little insignificant hobbits in Frodo and Sam. And this, I think, kind of shows us how to live a life that really counts. It's only when we focus on leaving a world better for future generations and being filled with love and compassion and good ale and good meals and good birthday celebrations that we can begin to understand that when we focus so much on our legacy, I think we often forget to live in the present and enjoy the life that we've been given. But make sure you like the video if you've gotten this far. Subscribe to the channel for more of my takes on this really, really incredible book. And as always, remember, we look toward Numenor that was, and beyond to Elvenhome that is, and to that which is beyond Elvenhome and will ever be. I'll see you in the next one.